Hello friends, welcome to Abhinav Goswami Law Classes. So friends, if you are liking my lectures, please subscribe to my channel first. Okay, so in our last lecture on my series on constitutional law, I discussed the law in regard to the President of India and Vice President of India. So today, I will move forward to further sections which deal with Council of Ministers. Okay, so let's start with our discussion for today. Okay, so as far as the law on Council of Ministers is concerned, before going into that, I need to tell you a bit of background so that it is easy for you to understand as to what I am talking about in these articles. Okay, so see, the first thing that I want to make clear is many people are like asking me that why are you not covering case laws now, as you were doing while you were discussing fundamental rights. See, when I was discussing fundamental right, it was very essential so as to tell you at what point or at what word that particular case law has to be applied. But as we have now completed the part on fundamental rights, now the case are not is that specific on a particular word or a particular sentence of a particular article. So it is more generic towards a few articles, like 2 3 articles within a same case are relevant. Okay, so what I am going to do, instead of doing sections and articles at the same time in the same video, because it will become very complicated, because same case may be applicable at 2 or 3 places and it may be too broad to cover to be covered in a single video. So what I am going to do, I am going to discuss with you articles, and I will start a separate video lectures on important case laws regarding to Constitution of India, and as far as my series on IPC is concerned, in relation to that also. Okay, so there will be two kind of videos that I will be uploading. One kind of videos will be about the sections, about the articles, the law, and one videos about the important case law. So you know, when you are learning the case laws, you should learn it, no, in great detail. It will not know 2 or 3 minutes will not justify what the law was. So I will deal them in with great detail, all the important case law. I will soon be coming with those lectures also. Okay, so as we all know that our Indian constitutions provides for a parliamentary system of India. And what is parliamentary system of India? Parliamentary system of India, as we have adopted from United Kingdom, it provides that there are two houses at the center sphere, and the same system is copied in the state also. So what is the essence of this parliamentary system is that all these members of parliaments, they are not the real policy makers. Okay, it is only the government in power. Okay, and even from those people who have been in power, like if we consider, take Lok Sabha for example, that in Lok Sabha there are 540 or 550 seats. Okay, the government who comes into power, who achieves the majority, even from those members who are in power, the prime minister chooses few people to be part of his council of ministers. They are the real persons who are in the policy making business. They are the persons who initiates the law. Okay, and they are the person who in essence has a responsibility towards the whole parliament. Okay, though the whole parliament has a role in play in making new laws, okay, or in other functions also, but it is a ministers, it is a council of ministers who are the people who initiates law. It is very exceptional that any independent or private members initiate a particular law, and he can also only do so only with the support of government. Without it, it is not possible. So it is only the ministers, the members of council of ministers, who are the real, who are the people who have real control on the policy making of a country. So it is very essential that you understand section 74 and section 75 of Constitution of India, so as to understand their power and functions and responsibilities. Okay, let's start with article 74 of Indian Constitution. It reads, council of ministers to aid and advise president. Okay, look at the heading itself, council of minister to aid and advise president. Okay, sub article 1, there shall be, a council of ministers with the prime minister at the head to aid and advise the president, who shall, in the exercise of his function, act in accordance with such advice. Very important sub article. This article has changed the way the government functions in our country. Okay, so the first thing that we need to focus on as far as this sub article is the use of word shall. So it means that it is not a discretionary article, it is a mandatory article. So in at all times, in every cases, there shall be a council of minister. It is a mandate that has been given by the constitution itself. Okay, there shall be a council of ministers with prime minister at the head. Prime minister at the head. Okay, so if we look at this word prime minister at the head, we come to know that though there shall be a council of minister, but always the head of council of minister will be the prime minister. Okay, so the second thing that we come to know about it, that prime minister is the head of council of ministers. Okay, and the third point deals about what is the function of this council of minister. The function is to aid and advise, to aid and advise who, aid and advise the president. Okay, so the third thing is what is the purpose of council of ministers, what is the essential function of council of minister. The purpose of an essential function of the council of minister is to aid and advise the president. And what are the meaning of these terms, aid and advise? Aid and advise means, aid means when you help someone into doing something. Okay, if a particular person is already doing something and you are coming and helping him to do that, this is called aid, that you are aiding him to achieve something or to do something. Okay, you are helping someone out, but you are not the initiator of the thing that the other person was doing. The other person was already doing that thing and you came and tried to help it. That is called aid. And as far as the second term advice is concerned, we all know that you are not physically helping him. Even in the case of advice, you are helping him, but you are more or less in a guiding role. You are advising it as to what you should do or what you should not do, and it is up to that person whether to opt it or not. Okay, so this is the what dictionary meaning of aid and advice. Okay, so what we have learned so far, that there shall be council of ministers bound with prime minister at the head. Prime minister will be the head. And finally, to what is the function, to aid and advise the president. These are the things that we have learned so far. Who shall, the president shall, in exercise of his function, act, very important to understand this term, in accordance with such advice. Okay, in accordance with such advice. Okay, so what is the meaning of that? That when the council of ministers give any particular advice to the president, he shall act in accordance with it. Okay, what is meant by in accordance with it? It means that he have to accept that advice and do that thing. So it is mandatory advice. It is, the president is bound by the advice. Okay, so it is binding advisory role that has been given to council of ministers. Very crucial to understand. Okay, and these word in accordance with such advice, or as far as the framing of sub article 1 is concerned, this was done by 42nd Amendment Act adopted in 1976 by Indira Gandhi government. It made it, already there was this thing that in the original constitution also, though the terminology was different, but it was clear that president was bound. But what article this 42nd Amendment Act did, that it made it explicit what was already implicit. Okay, so it specifically provided that, so as to remove all kinds of confusion in the mind of president, that he has to act in accordance with such advice. So this is what I was saying, that when we were discussing the provisions, we were getting no words like that. President is the head of the executive. He is no, he is the supreme commander. So this is the reason. This sub article is the reason why we say that president is not the real head. He is the not the real person. He is only a nominal head, because he acts always on the advice of council of ministers. And who is the head of council of minister? It is the prime minister. So it is the prime minister who is behind, who is having the real power in our uh, political structure of our country. So this is we need to understand. Okay, so just a quick recap that the as far as sub article 1 is concerned, the first thing is there shall be council of ministers. Second thing is the prime minister would be the head of the council of minister. The third important thing is the function of the council of minister would be to aid and advise the president. And the fourth and the most important thing is that the president shall act in accordance with such advice. Okay, he will be bound to do so. These are the four things that are made clear by sub article 1. Now come to the proviso. Provided that president may require the council of ministers to reconsider such advice, either generally or otherwise, and the president shall act in accordance with the advice tendered after such reconsideration. See, when if you see the wordings and the way subarticle 1 has been framed, that we just discussed, it was so no it was so binding on the president, so there was no breathing space for the president. So it was felt that it is not right. Even the president is a constitutional office, you can't just bind him, make him a puppy or whatever like that. So it was thought necessary so that a little bit of breathing space has to be provided to the president, at the same time ensuring the supremacy of the prime minister. And how it was done? It was done by 44th constitution amendment act. Okay, this was brought into force in 1978 by Morarji Desai government, 2 years after the 42nd amendment act. By this amendment act, some breathing space was provided to the president by saying that if the president do not agree with the advice that has been given by the council of ministers, he can send back the advice for reconsideration. Okay, he can ask the council of minister, no, you should have a relook at it. But if the council of ministers returns the advice after reconsideration, with or without changes, it doesn't matter whether the council of ministers made any changes to the advice or not. If after reconsideration the council of ministers sends back the advice either in the same form or in a different form, the president shall be bound to abide by it. So the only limited power that has been given to the president by proviso is a limited power of sending it back to for reconsideration only once. Okay, but if after reconsideration it comes back to the president even in the same form to which he had the objection, still he will have to give his assent to that. Okay, so provided that the president may require the council of ministers to reconsider such advice either generally or otherwise, and the president shall act in accordance with the advice tendered after such reconsideration. I hope you have understood subarticle 1. Okay, let's move forward to subarticle 2. The question whether any, and if so, what advice was tendered by the ministers to the president shall not be inquired into any court. A very, very big limitation on the powers of courts in India. It says that whatever was an advice that the Council of Ministers gave to the president, it can never be discussed, it can never be inquired in any court of law. What it essentially means that council of ministers cannot be brought to the court for whatever advice they may have given to the president, however bad, however no illogical advice that the council of minister gave to the president, uh, they can't be brought before the court for that. Okay, so the court's power has been completely excluded as far as the matters of advice given by the council of ministers to the president are concerned. And what is the essential reason for that? So our constitution has been based on three pillars. Okay, judiciary, executive, and legislature. So what is the main aim of our constitution is to maintain their separate and independent existence. So in order to maintain the independence of the executive, that is the council of ministers, from the influence of judiciary or control of judiciary, this sub article 2 has been provided. Because if the court has been given the power to inquire into what, as to what advice the council of ministers are giving to the president, then this court will become a supreme body to the executive, because it will be having control what laws will come into force. Because only on the basis of those advice the laws are adopted, because it is the president who gives the final assent. So if you are able to inquire as to what advice is being given, or is it to decide whether it is right or not, then supreme court will become the real lawmaker of the country. So it will have two functions then, lawmaker and law interpreter both. No, that can't be allowed. So in order to maintain the independence of the executive within its realm, it was made clear by sub article 2 that whatever advice that is being given by the council of minister to the president, that can never be inquired into in any court of law. But again a dispute arose. So what is the extent of this exclusion? What is meant by advice? It is just that that document which contains the advice that is protected from the jurisdiction of the court, or is it everything which happened around the discussion regarding to that advice that is exempted from the discussion in the court? So this has been a real dispute, the real bone of contention, okay, for between, and it has been a cause of fight between the executive and the judiciary also. So what is the real present law? And I will also discuss the case law in future about which deals with this point, that as far as the all the no excerpts of the meetings that happened while giving that expert, all the opinions of the ministers which form part of that advice, they are protected. Okay. Okay, so all the material that constituted part of the advice, that is protected. But on what basis that advice was given? Okay, what were the grounds which are independent of that advice? Okay, so there are two things. One thing is that the advice is being given. Okay, so there are meetings, there are formulations, documents are printed, okay, research are done, everything, this is protected. But on what grounds, what were the circumstances, what was the background? These are independent of this advice. So these grounds, these background, okay, what were the basis of the advice, they can still be inquired into the supreme court. Okay, this is to maintain the balance between the two. So I hope you have understood sub article 2 of section 274 also. So this is section 74. We will do a quick recap. Council of Ministers to aid and advise President. There are four requirements as far as sub-article 1 is concerned. There shall be a Council of Ministers. Prime Minister will be the head of it, and the role of function of it will be to aid and advise the President, and the President will be bound by the advice. Then the proviso came by 78 Constitution 44th Constitution Amendment Act, and it provides that the President may require that the first advice may be reconsidered by the Council of Ministers. But if the advice comes again in the same form or not, the President will be bound by it. But when we came to the sub-article, it dealt about the jurisdiction of the court, and it said that whatever advice was given by the ministers can never be inquired into any court of law. Okay, this is article 74. Okay, let's come to article 75 of our Indian Constitution. So it deals with other provisions which are left out of article 74. Other provisions as to ministers. Who are ministers? Okay, so there is this difference. One category is members of parliament. Okay, these are the members who have won elections, and they have won from their respective constituencies, and they have a seat in the parliament. These are members of parliament. We call them MPs. Okay, then there is different people who are ministers. Okay, they are chosen by the prime minister from his government. So as these are the specific people that I'm choosing to be the ministers in my council of ministers. So these people are also MPs, but they are also given a additional job of being a minister for the government. Okay, so they are given a separate ministries so as to manage them. Okay, so these MPs only become ministers, but not all MPs are ministers, but all ministers are MPs. Okay, so this goes like that. Okay, so So as far as section Article 75 is concerned, it again deals with the ministers who are part of Council of Ministers. It doesn't deal with all the members of Parliament. Sub Article 1. The Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President, and the other ministers shall be appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister. Okay, now we will be like, okay, I told you that Prime Minister is the real head, but sub Article 1 of Article 75 says that the President is the one who appoints Prime Minister. So how can the Prime Minister be the real head? Because if it is the President who appoints him, okay, it is true. It is true in paper, but practically the thing is very different. Though President is the one who appoints the Prime Minister, but the choice which the President has in order to exercise this power, is to exercise this discretion, is very limited. He is bound to, in most of the cases, he is bound to appoint only those people as Prime Minister who have a majority in the House. So who are the people who have majority in the House? A particular political party who has won most of the seats in the Parliament. So if the result of the election has been clear and a particular political party has been able to achieve majority in the Parliament, as has happened with the Modi government, then President doesn't have much choice, and he has to appoint the leader of that political party to be the Prime Minister of India. But it may happen that a particular party could not achieve majority in the House, okay, and there are 2 3 parties who are very close to each other in number of seats, which was happening before in the 2009 election when Manmohan Singh became Prime Minister. In the 2004 1999 elections, this was happening, okay. So no single political party was able to achieve majority in the Parliament. So in this case, the Prime Minister gets a very small power, a small discretion of giving opportunity to a leader of any of those parties to come before the House and prove their majority. Okay, so he can appoint a leader of a political party to be the Prime Minister and give him a certain number of days so as to prove his majority. Okay, so when a political party does not get a majority, no political party gets a majority in the House, then the President may get a bit of discretion, but still a convention has been established that it should be that the even if a party has not, no party has been able to achieve the majority, it is the leader of the party who has achieved the largest number of seats should be given the first opportunity to prove his maturity. So in this case also a convention has arose, though President is not bound by that, but a convention has arose that President should, okay, not must, should give the opportunity, give opportunity to the leader of the largest party first so as to do so. So this happens most of the times that the leader of the largest party has been given the opportunity and he is able to prove the government also. But still, if the President wants and if he thinks otherwise, if he thinks that a leader of another party who is not the largest party in that election may be able to prove majority, he can even give him the opportunity first to do so. Okay, this is very limited discretion that has been given to the Prime Minister to appoint a particular person as Prime Minister. It is mostly the leader of the party who has achieved the majority. Okay, let's come to sub article 1A. The total number of ministers, including the Prime Minister, in the Council of Ministers shall not exceed 15% of the total number of members of the House of People. Very, very important. Okay, this provides that the total number of ministers, okay, ministers in the Council of Ministers can't exceed 15% of the total membership of the House of total membership of the Lok Sabha. So total membership of the Lok Sabha varies around 540 to 550. Okay, so it can't exceed, the Council of Ministers can't exceed 15% of that. Okay, so the maximum limit has been imposed that the number of Council of Ministers in any government can't exceed 15% of the total membership of Lok Sabha. Very simple. Next sub article 1B. A member of either House of Parliament belonging to any political party who is disqualified for being a member of that House under paragraph 2 of the 10th schedule shall also be disqualified to be appointed as a minister under clause 1. for the duration of the period commencing from the date of his disqualification till the date on which the term of his office as such member would expire, or where he contests any election to either House of Parliament before the expiry of such period till the date on which he is declared elected, whichever is early. Okay, so as to understand this sub-article, first thing you need to understand is what is 10th schedule. Okay, 10th schedule deals with the provisions regarding disqualifications of members of parliament. In the 10th schedule, various grounds have been provided as to when a particular member of parliament will be disqualified, and who has the power of disqualifying members of parliament. It is a speaker. Okay, who disqualifies members on various, there are various grounds. Okay, so that a particular person is not behaving in a good manner or whatever. So if a so 10 schedule provides for the disqualifications of the prime minister. So as far as sub-article 1b provides that if a particular member of parliament has been disqualified under paragraph 2 of 10th schedule, in that case that person cannot be appointed as a minister, as a minister also. Okay, so a person who has been disqualified as a member of parliament, how can he be appointed as a minister? Okay, and this bar will continue until his seat, until that the normal term that which he was supposed to complete if he were not disqualified ends. So for the whole term of his no duration for which he was appointed before being disqualified, this bar will continue. But the only exception is that if he resigns from that seat and goes for re-election and gets elected again to the parliament, okay, on the basis of fresh elections, then this bar will end when he enters the seat of becomes a member of parliament by way of re-election. Okay, this is only a clear rule, very simple rule, that a person who has been disqualified under 10th schedule, he can't be made a minister. That is the gist of it. Let's come to sub-article 2. The ministers shall hold office during the pleasure of the president. Again, very misguiding provision. Okay, why? Practically misguiding, not legally. Okay. So again, the ministers who are the members of Council of Ministers, even Prime Minister is a minister, he is the head of Council of Ministers. They hold office, shall hold office during the pleasure of the president. So it the impression comes out that it is a president. Okay, so so the impression that is coming out is that it is the president who is appointing also, and this is, if the president wants, he can remove them also on his own, on the basis of his pleasure. So this is not so. Let me tell you that we need to read it with sub-article 1, okay, of article 74. It said that president shall always act in accordance with the advice of council of minister. And who is the head of council of minister? The prime minister. So essentially it is the prime minister, on the advice of whom the president shall be functioning. So when sub article 2 of article 75 says that the minister shall hold office during the pleasure of president, it essentially and it practically means that the minister shall hold office during the pleasure of the prime minister. Because if the prime minister wants, he can advise the president to remove any minister from his council of ministers or to appoint someone else as part of his council of minister. So it is the president who essentially does it. It is the prime minister who essentially does it, but president is the one who officially does that, because president has been given the official power or not the legal power to appoint someone or to throw out someone, but the real person behind it is the president. So if the question comes in the examination that who is on whose pleasure the prime ministers hold office, it is the president. The answer will be the president. But again, the practicalities are different, and you can explain the practicalities also, and it will be very good on your part. Okay. Sub article 3. The council of ministers shall be collectively responsible to the house of people. This is the basis. This small sub-article is the basis of the whole parliamentary structure of our country. Okay, the whole political system that we follow is based on this small sub-article 3 of Article 75, which provides for collective responsibility of the Council of Ministers to the House of People. Okay, so it means that all these ministers with the prime minister at their head are the person who are responsible to the house of people, not the president. It doesn't say that the president is responsible to house of people. for whatever actions it takes. No, it is the council of ministers with prime minister at the head who is responsible to House of People. So if only that person who is responsible can be given the power to exercise it, no. How a person who doesn't have any access power, how can he be made responsible? So as council of ministers have been given the real power under Article 74 sub Article 1, so they are the one who have been made responsible to the House of People for all their functions. House of People means Lok Sabha. So because everyone knows that president is, though all acts are being appointed, no, adopted in the name of president, every function is being done in the name of the president, but it is a council of ministers who is making the president to do that. So it should be the House of People, council of ministers who should be responsible to the House of People, not president. This is provided by sub article 3. It says that the council of ministers shall be collectively responsible to the House of People. And now you will ask me what is meant by collectively. Okay, so when it comes to the responsibility, the whole council of ministers, all the ministers together, will be considered as a single entity. The council of ministers themselves cannot start no posing obligations or no posing responsibility on this particular person. No, if a particular wrong has been done, the whole council of ministers will be responsible for that wrong, even though it may be the fault of a single minister. It doesn't matter. The House of Commons has nothing to do with whatever happens inside the council of ministers. Okay, if a particular wrong happens, even due to the fault of even a single minister, the whole council of ministers, including the prime minister, becomes responsible to the House of People. Okay, this is what is said by sub-article 3. Now come to sub-article 4. Before a minister enters upon his office, the president shall administer to him the oaths of office and of secrecy according to the form set out for the purpose in the third schedule. Okay. So as we discussed in sub-article 2, all these sub-articles are interrelated. Don't they are not separate. Okay, so when we read sub-article 2, said that the minister hold the office during the pleasure of the president. Okay, and when we read sub-article 1 of Article 75, it said that the prime minister shall be appointed by, and other ministers shall be appointed by the president. So how the president appoints these people? So when appointing these people, it is the president who has the responsibility to administer oath to all these ministers, including the prime minister. And what is the schedule? Which schedules contains the forms of oath of all these people? It is the third schedule. Always remember, third schedule is about oaths. Oath. Third schedule. Okay, and 10th schedule was about, tell me, 10th schedule was about disqualification. Okay, so as far as sub-article 4 is, we need to remember that president administers oath to all the ministers and the prime minister. Sub-article 5. A minister who for any period of 6 consecutive months is not a member of either house of the parliament shall at the expiration of that period cease to be a minister. Very important. Okay. As I just told you like 5 minutes back, that all the ministers are members of parliament, but all members of parliament are not ministers. So what I told you, that the essential requirement of being a minister is, first you have to be a member of parliament, you must win an election. But this is not so for a limited period. Even if a particular person is not a member of parliament, he can be appointed as a minister in council of minister, but only subject to the maximum period of 6 months. So this person who has been appointed as a minister without being the member of parliament, he has to get elected to the House of People or House of or Rajya Sabha within this period of 6 months. And if he fails to do so, he has to vacate his seat as a minister in the Council of Ministers. So this relief has been given for the maximum period of 6 months. And why it has been done? So it may happen that a particular person who is very good into a particular area, okay, he is very good into this thing, he is very knowledgeable, okay, and he can do something for the benefit of the country. But for some reason he loses an election, because elections are based on your popularity. It doesn't always based on your talent. Okay, so it may happen that if this person who is so good loses election, so if the prime minister is not able to appoint that person, the whole country will be devoid of the services of this talented person. So in order to remove this lacuna, what this provision provided, sub article 5 provided, that this person may be appointed as a minister even though he did not win the election, but the only responsibility that has been posed is that he has to go for election again and try to win a seat in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and he has 6 months for that. And this has happened. Okay, if you see the 2014 elections, Arun Jaitley lost. Arun Jaitley ji lost, and still he was appointed as a minister, and he was managed he managed to win in an election in within 6 months. Okay, so this happens practically also. Now come to the last sub article of Article 75. At sub-article 6, the salaries and allowances of ministers shall be such as Parliament may from time to time by law determine, and until Parliament so determine shall be as specified in the second schedule. Okay, so what are the salaries these ministers will get? What are the benefits? What are the allowances that these ministers will be getting? Shall be determined by whom? The Parliament. Okay, not the ministers. Okay, again make a distinction. Okay, Parliament is different, Council of Ministers is different. Council of Ministers is a small part of Parliament, but again, Council of Ministers is appointed essentially out of the government, and a government is in majority in the Parliament. Okay, so whatever the Council of Ministers wants to do, essentially is what the Parliament wants to do. So it is the Parliament as a whole, including Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, both the houses, that have been given the power to decide as to what salaries and allowances that these ministers will be, including the prime ministers, will be getting. And until the Parliament so decides, makes a law in regard to that, and the law has already been made in regard to that, but until and unless that law was made, the salaries and allowances as mentioned in the second schedule were being given to them. So remember, this second schedule contains salaries and allowances for different functionaries as provided in the Constitution of India, until unless a law, explicit law, has been made by the Parliament. So remember, this second schedule is about salaries and allowances. Okay, so this was our discussion for today. So I hope you have understood. This was a very important lecture. Okay, so as to understand the political structure of our country, what are the powers of Council of Ministers and the powers of President. So it goes by and by. So I hope you have enjoyed the lecture for today. Please go through this article once you are finished with this lecture, and you will get a holistic picture of it. Okay, until then, thank you very much for bearing with me. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel and share as much as possible. I want to reach no, as much students as possible. Okay, thank you very much. I'll see you soon in my IPC lecture series. Okay, bye.